The Exorcist. Exorcism of Roland. Have you heard of the most terrifying horror film of all time called The Exorcist, released way back in 1973? Well, what if we were to tell you that it was based on a true story? Yes, you heard that right. In today's episode of Bloody Monday, we bring you to the real-life incident that inspired the movie. It all began in the year 1949 in Maryland, USA. A 14-year-old boy named Robbie was living with his Aunt Harriet and her family. Aunt Harriet was a professor of paranormal activities and dark studies, and she helped people in communicating with their loved ones who had passed away. Robbie's parents had died, and he missed them dearly and wanted to talk to them one last time. One day his aunt gifted him a Ouija board, after a lot of requests from Robbie. He started engaging with the Ouija board every day in the hope of talking to his parents. Slowly, Robbie's behavior started to change. He became increasingly irritable and hard to handle. But soon, Robbie was hit by another blow when Aunt Harriet passed away. It was then that he began to spend all his time using the Ouija board. He kept on trying to summon his aunt's spirit. He loved her very much, and he wanted her to come back at any cost. Gradually, Robbie's mental state started to deteriorate. He started hearing strange noises coming from the walls of his house. Sometimes, he felt as though his aunt were calling out to him, while at other times, he would hear her fighting with someone. There were instances where he heard someone crying and then laughing out loud in the house. Aunt Harriet's family members noticed a drastic change in Robbie's behavior, too. He'd become increasingly hostile and short-tempered. One day, an elderly member of the family saw scratch marks all over Robbie's body. Everyone in the family was scared for Robbie's well-being. One evening, when nobody was at home, Robbie was using the Ouija board to try and contact his Aunt Harriet when something spine-chilling happened. Suddenly, all the doors and windows of the house began to rattle. They made a sound in a pattern of 3 and then stopped. Robbie's head started spinning. He saw 2 apparitions, 2 shadows moving in all directions in his room. The lights flickered ceaselessly, further throwing Robbie into a panic. He quickly ran to his aunt's room where he saw her sitting on the bed, combing her hair. Robbie called out to her, but she didn't respond. Then Aunt Harriet slowly moved her hair out of her face and looked at Robbie. Robbie's heart sank when he saw her face. It wasn't Aunt Harriet's face, but someone with an extremely scary appearance. Her eyes were white, and insects were crawling all over her face. She looked at Robbie and laughed while sticking out her tongue. Robbie was petrified and turned to run out of the room, only to find himself face to face with a demon-like creature with long teeth and red eyes. He froze on the spot as if someone had cast a spell on him, and the door of the room slammed shut by itself. That night, when Aunt Harriet's family members came back, they were horrified to see Robbie covered in blood. He was holding a knife in one hand and the neighbor's dead cat in the other. Robbie was found tearing away at the cat's flesh and consuming it. But when he spotted the other family members, he acted really crazy. He started shouting loudly, and then he suddenly passed out. In the coming days, Robbie's condition continued to get worse. When psychiatrists failed to diagnose him, Aunt Harriet's family reached out to 2 priests for help. The moment the priests set foot in the house, Robbie started screaming uncontrollably. The family had to tie him to his bed. The priest couldn't believe what he saw. Robbie started laughing hysterically and started insulting God. He even started abusing the priests. Suddenly, one priest poured holy water on Robbie, and then something terrible happened. Robbie's eyes turned white, and his face morphed into a devilish one. The furniture started moving on its own. The priest started chanting prayers and Robbie screamed out in pain. Soon after that, he fell unconscious. Several exorcisms were performed after that day, but Robbie's condition didn't improve. In one of the exorcisms, Robbie's clothes tore apart, and strange blood marks began appearing all over his body. There was a massive X-shaped mark on his chest. Suddenly, Robbie's bed started flying in the air. The priest stopped the exorcism at that very moment. All of the family members were horrified to see him. The priest told them that his body was not taken over by any one, but perhaps 10 demonic spirits, as X denoted 10 in Latin. The next day, as the priest came to perform the final exorcism, they couldn't find Robbie. When they turned around, they saw him up on the ceiling, muttering something in a heavy voice in Latin while laughing and mocking them. The priest quickly performed the exorcism once more. Robbie fell down and they tied him to the bed once again. During the exorcism, his body started to stiffen, and he started screaming in pain. Suddenly, Robbie started vomiting. A black, strange, sticky liquid came out of his body. After this, he fell asleep. When Robbie woke up the next day, everything was back to normal. He was feeling very weak, but he didn't remember what had happened to him. After a few days of recovery, Robbie became completely well, and nothing like that ever happened to him again. But Robbie's family members and the priest who witnessed it will never forget the horrifying experience. Do you like the real story behind the movie The Exorcist? If yes, then subscribe to Bloody Monday now and enjoy spine-chilling horror stories every week.